Hey YouTube, this is Kurt, and today my subject is going to be a little bit about psychology in guitar and how certain psychological aspects will influence your learning. The first thing I want to talk about, well, there's kind of this concept in psychology. It's called dendritic branching, and I could go into a whole different explanation about that, but I'll give you a very narrow one. Essentially, in your brain, you have so many millions or billions of neurons. Yeah, billions of neurons. It's quite a lot, and they connect with each other with these things called dendrites, and yeah, they like touch each other sometimes, or almost touch each other. They get pretty close. And what happens when you learn something? And this is suggested by an experiment that was done. Where they hooked an electrode up to a neuron. I think it was of a rat or something, and it was fired like 1,000 times. What they found is like what happens when you fire, when you have a neuron fire so many times and in like a certain direction, eventually it'll go from having like 5 branches of connection to having like 10 branches of connection. That's an example, but it gets more branches. That's like that's the concept here. So when you learn guitar, that's essentially when you practice repeatedly and you are devoted to your cause. Eventually, that's what happens, and it's not something that happens overnight. It takes time to develop. So sometimes you might be learning even more than you think you're learning, as long as you're being consistent. Eventually, maybe one day, might what caused the clicking effect. So I just wanted to tell you that to keep maybe some of the younger players or the newer players from getting discouraged. No matter what, as long as you're putting your fingers on fretboard, you are probably learning. And again, it might be a process that takes thousands of times for a certain area of your brain to allow it to fire. But eventually, it'll probably happen. You may know a lot more than you think. Aside from that, like I want to talk a little bit about practice schedules. Now, I think the subconscious is such an important part of learning guitar. And yeah, there's like 3 levels of consciousness, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into it. But your subconscious is kind of like what's in the back of your head all day. And the subconscious also affects you a little bit at night. If you've ever woken up for something in anticipation without setting an alarm, that's your subconscious at work. And I think it has very much so a lot to do with learning. Now, when you're focused on music over a long period of time instead of a short period of time, it's probably going to help you. Concerning practice schedules, if you practice 3 hours 1 day a week, that's probably going to be a lot less efficient than doing a half an hour 7 days a week. That adds up to 3.5 hours, yes. That method 2 is going to be far more efficient because you're spacing out that time and you're letting a lot of that work essentially happen for you. You're going to forget a lot more material if you condense your practice to such an extreme and narrow time slot. So half an hour every day can be a really efficient practice method. What you practice, that's probably a whole other discussion. Probably save it for another time. Or maybe at all. Not at all. You can do a lot of research on your own. But I also believe, with the evidence that's at hand, that it is possible that you get a song stuck in your head sometimes. Correct? You can answer me in the comment section with your answer. Go ahead. But sometimes you get a song stuck in your head, or you're trying to figure out a solo that is really not quite clicking. Sometimes when you listen to that solo over and over again and you get it stuck in your head, sometimes like if you keep it in the back of your head, it's almost as if like eventually that helps the clicking process. And that's part of the reason why sometimes it's good to set down your guitar if you've been playing for a couple hours and say, okay, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to just let this sit a little bit. Because your brain is kind of like a sponge. Your brain is kind of like the sponge, and the information is kind of like dish detergent. If you throw the sponge at a bunch of dish detergent immediately, like, it's not going to soak up very much. But if you let it sit in that detergent, eventually, over a long period of time, it'll soak all the way through. And that's kind of the way a lot of information works, like, in your brain. That's just kind of how it happens. This is all reinforced by a lot of studying schedules, and I think it is very applicable to music as well. So with that said, like, I hope you guys stay encouraged. I hope you stick to a pretty consistent practice level. But again, if the practice guitar is also it's a very spiritual endeavor. So you don't have to practice at 5 p.m. every day. You can practice whenever you're feeling stressed or whenever the mood brings you to do it. So it's important to have at least a little bit of structure there, but it's all a matter of to what degree. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to comment. I'll be back soon with another video. Hope you like the Zeppelin. Love Zeppelin, one of my favorite bands of all time. Love Jimmy Page. But yeah, that's what I got for today. So thanks, guys.